Bragging rights in the state of Oregon belong to the Ducks still as they win the Civil War 41-7 over Oregon State. This is the Dick Hanna Dealers post-game scoreboard show. I am Joe Fisher. Across the glass with me today is Jordan Schultz in a game that a lot of people that were maybe lacking juice for, maybe the team in, black and gold today were lacking a little bit of juice to start. Well, they responded from maybe a relatively slow start with 34 unanswered points to give them the 41-7 victory. And again, bragging rights remains with the Oregon Ducks at least until 2027. They'll be taking a year off before re-upping this rivalry in a couple of years and extending through 2032. But Oregon, they come in today 41-7. Clearly a dominating score, but I mean, looking at some of the stats, looking at how the rest of this game played out after it was 7-7, much more dominating victory than what the score indicates for the Oregon Ducks here today down in Eugene. And Jordan, I just want to start with the defense here in this one. We'll get to just about everything, but yeah, I think a big focus coming into this game for the team as a whole was the defense and shutting down the run game. I think Northwestern kind of gave a little bit of a recipe on film last week with slowing the game down, being able to convert first, second, get themselves in positions to convert those third downs, convert those fourth downs, and what looked like it was kind of trending towards that again. Oregon rectified that very early on in this game, and especially in that second half where they were much more dominant team in this game. Just looking at the total yards, 80 passing yards for Oregon State, 67 rushing yards for Oregon State. Again, especially with how this game was starting out. The Ducks, they flipped the switch at some point in this game and never looked back.
There was definitely some concern in the first half. I kind of had written on my notes like, hey, we got to note that the Ducks have played two crappy quarters in a row with the fourth quarter at Northwestern last week with those two late scores, and then coming into this first quarter against Oregon State in, I will call it the Civil War. I'm sick of hearing the rivalry game. It is the Civil War.
Give us something to call it else if you're going to tell us that you're not going to call it that anymore. Like, give us a replacement at least.
There's literally 200 rivalry games in college football. What are we doing? Yeah. So anyways, I digress on that. But thankfully, it was figured out. But at least in that first quarter, first half, Joe, you're right. Oregon State, they not only were getting a lot of push on Oregon's defensive line. Guys weren't staying home into the plays where Hankerson was really getting positive yards early. I think he ran for almost like 40, 45 yards or something like that. No, 36 I'm looking at, and a touchdown in the first half. I mean, it seemed like at times Oregon would just miss him in the backfield, and I don't know if that was just, like we were talking about a second ago, a lackadaisy start or kind of a carryover from that game to Northwestern. And it's also worth pointing out, this is Autzen Stadium, right? This isn't a 9 a.m. road game. This isn't the first one of the season. You're coming back to comfort. You're coming back home. And I personally was a little nervous, but at the same time, I heard Jorgie say it in the postgame, there's situations that your team needs to go through each season, right? And it's honestly okay at times if you're seeing a couple of struggles, because this team needs to struggle through some things to figure things out, right? This is Dan Lanning's fourth season at the helm. Even he hasn't had experience dealing with everything. So there's just a lot of nuances in the game, and I wish that I could say, darn it, they didn't beat Oregon State 63-13 like I thought they were going to. Like, that sucks, but
52-13 over here.
Yeah, what was Anthony's 49-0 this morning?
Which I love the pettiness from Anthony. Hey, he was at least close as far as the Ducks points go.
It's true.
But it would have been nice to pitch a shutout, which they almost did, but Anthony Newman with a 49-0 prediction for the game, and then dirt 52-10. So.
Exactly. But it's nice to see that they eventually worked it out. We didn't see any picks tonight, but hey, we saw Bear Alexander get that fumble recovery in the second half. By the third quarter, everything was right. And it felt like the game, at least people going in, thought it would look like. And it really, thankfully, ended up being, I would say, not as high of a scoring game for Oregon as you would look at. 41-7 the final. If you kind of dive into the stats, 585 yards for Oregon, 147 yards only for the Oregon State Beavers. Like, there are just things that drives happening, the way that the offense went. Like, yes, they weren't great every single time, but just the way that the game shook out, Oregon ended up looking like they should have, but it took until the third quarter.
Well, and this was really, they'll moniker, a tale of two halves. This is really a tale of one quarter versus three quarters.
That's a good point.
You look at the drive charts of these two teams. I mean, Oregon, they came out fast. You love to see that opening drive touchdown, especially after they stalled out in their opening drive last week.
Of course.
And I think an interesting stat I saw during the television broadcast is that Oregon has either the most or second most opening drive points since Dan Lanning took over the program in 2022.
Damn.
I think 180, possibly 187 now with today's touchdown, opening drive points. And they came out right away and went down the field in 2 minutes and 50 seconds, and they scored. And you're like, all right, this is looking good. They were able to hold Oregon State to 3-and-out on their first drive. So Oregon gets the ball back, and you're like, let's keep this going. Let's keep cooking. We like this. And then they run a fourth down play that doesn't even get to the sticks. And you're like, okay, that was definitely a choice. There was a little bit of pressure, and maybe Dante rushed the play a little bit more, but than he would have liked to. And so then the Beavers get the ball back, have a little momentum going. And then, again, looking at the drive chart, this was the only successful drive they had all day. 13 plays, 64 yards, 7 minutes and 40-second time of possession to tie the game at 7. And then the Ducks were they did have to punt on their next drive, but then at that point, it was all Oregon on offense. It was all Oregon on defense. There was clearly adjustments made to slow this run game down for Oregon State. All game long, the passing game was slowed down by Oregon. And just looking at, again, the drive chart, this is after the touchdown that Oregon State scored. They went punt, halftime, punt, fumble, punt. So, they just absolutely locked them down.
Yeah.
And again, just from where that second drive, how that looked, to be able to bow your backs, someone getting in your ears, whether it was people watching how Bryce Betcher was flying around.
No kidding.
And maybe that was the energy was contagious, but it was very impressive to me how they were able to kind of put their foot in the ground and say, no, we're done with this. We're not letting you do anything the rest of this game.
Yeah, Kingston Lopa almost had that pick, I believe, late in the first half as well. So there was definitely that turnaround point that you're talking about, Joe. But I got to say, impressive on Oregon State's end to at least in the first quarter come in and play pretty mistake-free football. Hey, I've been bagging on the Beavers all week. I've been talking about how I'm sick of their fans bitching. I get it. They have a reason to bitch. But frankly, they treated Oregon fans like crap before all this transition happened. So everyone's like, I hate Oregon now. But, you know what? I just am not a fan of the way that you've treated Oregon for the last 20, 25 years, Beavers fans, but I got to give that team credit today. They came in, they actually looked, I think Dusty Harris said it on the broadcast, that was the best drive for Oregon State all season, that 7-minute, 50-second drive.
Great
they
point.
ran, they actually were able, we were talking about it a second ago, win that battle in the trenches, but along with that, and I want to ask Anthony Newman about this coming up, Joe, since we're talking about defense, they were even able to attack the perimeter in the first half. There were a couple of missed assignments by defensive backs. I want to see addressed. I'm wondering if that's just, still some early season struggles, but we're 4 games in, Joe. I feel like those shaky plays and the things happening early in the season with younger kids making mistakes should probably be worked out by now. And yes, eventually the game did look how we wanted it to look, but yeah, that long drive, yes, it's against Oregon State here. Northwestern had a couple of them last week. It does scare me that Penn State could be setting them for a long drive next week. It could be, later in the season, a lot of Big Ten teams are able to get those long drives in Oregon, which really is the best way to beat them.
Yeah, and again, I just think the way that they rectify those mistakes early in this game rather than letting it drag on and just keeping this offense completely in check. To look at some of the stats here, team stats, Oregon Ducks, 585 total yards of offense, which I heard Jerry and Jorgie say that in the game. I was like, oh my God, really that much? Almost 600 yards? Especially with, again, how they were kind of slowed down in that first half and had minimal possessions. A lot of yardage for Oregon, 147 for Oregon State, 67 rushing yards at 2.6 yards per clip. That is, again, based off of that one drive that Oregon State had in the first quarter, where the game was trending. They completely put their foot in the ground and said, you're not going to do that anymore.
Well, 1 third down conversion the rest of the game after that, It was bad.
And again, there was a couple completions in that long drive for Oregon State, but they held Oregon State to, let me see here, 80 net passing yards. 80 net passing yards, 7 of 22. We're going to go to Anthony Newman here in a few minutes, but this secondary has yet to give up a passing touchdown through 4 games. They, to me, have been the most impressive unit on this Ducks team, I think. I would say them and probably the running back room to start, but the secondary has been absolutely shackles, lockdown, seatbelt, have them in a box, whatever analogy you want to use. Just an impressive performance from them again.
Yeah, young kids and the transfer portal really helping out, replacing, I would say, what the Ducks had in a pretty good defensive back room last year. But Dylan Thieneman coming in,
that kid lays hat, man.
The top transfer safety in the nation from Purdue
he flies around.
I think he has made Oregon's defense one of the top 5 in the nation immediately. You got the young kid Aaron Flowers coming in with him. He's a freshman, but he's been looking good. I mean, frankly, and honestly, I feel like the Ducks linebackers like Betcher, like Tuioti are so fast that, yeah, they're up on the line, but they can also kind of step back and give that extra protection needed in the backfield. And that was one reason why I think that Malik Murphy could not do anything today. Oregon's defense just seemed to be everywhere, whether it was zone or it was man. They were, I don't know if it was them fooling Malik Murphy or just the fact that Oregon's defense is much more talented than Oregon State's offensive line and just not giving Murphy enough time. It was, outside of that long drive, it was a pretty confusing day for Oregon State trying to figure it out on offense.